Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, sponsored by ACR Poker, where this coming Sunday, July 7th, it's the return of the TPE free roll. That's right, a $1,000 tournament with a $0 buy-in, and you have a shot at winning your share of the $1,000 free roll prize. You have to have an account on ACR Poker. There's a link in the description of this podcast where you can sign up and get a first-time deposit bonus of 100% up to $2,000 just by clicking the link in the description of this podcast and entering the promo code TPE. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in fabulous Las Vegas, where things have not been going fabulously at all. I have been chip leader in a bracelet event on WSOP.com with 900 players remaining. As some of you saw last week on twitch.tv/ClaytonComic last Sunday. And in that tournament, I was chip leader with 900 players left. 1 out of 900 and 420 players cashed. I finished 475. So a lot of things had to go wrong, and you can watch all of them if you visit my Twitch page, and you can see the precipitous decline. That's kind of been the World Series of Poker in a nutshell for me. It's been fear and losing in Las Vegas. I have had a big stack in so many different tournaments, and I have very little to show for it. I have yet to make a day two this summer, although unlike a few years ago, I have managed to make several dinner breaks, so I suppose that's something. By the way, I plan on playing day 1D of the main event. That's tomorrow, July 6th. And I'm hoping that I will just see a change in my luck. I don't want to say that luck is the only reason why I haven't been having a great summer this year, but I definitely have had a lot of bad beats. I'll spare you the details, but there's like set over set, or, ace queen losing to king queen all in pre-flop. This sort of thing seems to be happening at a higher frequency than it should. Of course, we expect if you're going to play poker every day for a month and a half, you will have some bad beats. Obviously, that's part of the game. But it seems like, especially in the last week or so, that's been happening a lot more than it should. And so, as a result, I have very few cashes this summer to speak of. But yeah, the main event is obviously what it's all about. And it's my favorite tournament of the whole year. I absolutely cannot wait to play tomorrow. They're expecting a huge field, and I'm sure there will be one. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. Looking forward to it. I hope some of you are also here in Vegas, and maybe we can at least give each other a fist bump in between hands or something. Say hi on Twitter, Clayton Comic on Twitter, or hit me up in the TPE Discord. Click the link in the description right now to join the TPE Discord absolutely free. I want to thank you guys for some of the comments about last week's episode featuring the great Shannon Elizabeth and the great Matt Stout. We had a lot of fun. We went to an actual recording studio and got a chance to talk about the charity event. So for all the bad things that happened this week at the poker table, on the felt as it were, I actually had one really great night this week, which was July 3rd. We had the Rhino Rumble to raise money for the Shannon Elizabeth Foundation, which helps endangered animals in faraway places like South Africa. And the event itself was amazing. Shannon is as lovely as can be. She's really fun to play with. There were a lot of really fun people at this event. There were athletes. Actually, the guy who won the 50-50 raffle was a professional boxer. There was also some famous race car driver. Debbie Gibson, pop star from the 80s, was there. Trishelle Canatella from MTV Real World was there. So it was fun, and I got to meet and talk to a lot of interesting celebrities and stuff like that. Actually sat at the same table as Barry Greenstein, who absolutely crushed my soul when I got it all in with his 10-9 suited versus my pocket queens, and can you guess what happened? That was my bust out hand. Anyway, Barry Greenstein, by all rights, should have been the bounty at our table. The most famous person at each table is supposed to be the bounty. Somehow I was the bounty, and the only reason for that, guys, is that Barry didn't even tell the powers that be that he was attending the event. So he likes to keep things on the down low, kind of under the radar, but still giving back to charity, as he was known back in the day as the Robin Hood of poker, and not much has changed there. I'm going to be posting some pictures from that wonderful event on my Instagram page, which is, of course, at Clayton Comic on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, any other form of social media that you can think of. You can find me at Clayton Comic. All right, well, last week our strategy segment featured Shannon Elizabeth turning quads. So we're not going to talk about that hand in terms of analysis, because how many times in your life are you going to have quads? Although I think we did have a pretty lively strategy discussion around whether to slow play or whether to try to induce a bluff with a tiny bet on the river, etc. But I want to look back at a hand that I played at the Win as part of their $2,200 mystery bounty tournament with $3 million guaranteed. Now, I discussed this hand 2 weeks ago on this very podcast, but at that point I had not yet used a solver to analyze my play. But I want to go back and look at this hand again. This time we're going to use GTO Wizard, which is absolutely the number one tool to help you improve your poker game. You can study, you can practice against a computer AI-generated perfect robot opponent. You can upload the hands that you've played, and the wizard will analyze your play and help you find and plug leaks in your game. Guys, if you click the link in the description of this podcast, you can receive 24 hours unlimited access to all of GTO Wizard's features and save 10% off of your first purchase. But you have to use this affiliate link. It's gtowizard.com/p/TPE. And you can also find that in the description. All right, so let's go back and take another look at this hand, and this time I'll let you know what the solver outputs are on GTO Wizard. So you may recall I have 18,000 in my stack, so I'm not doing particularly well. In this tournament, you start with 30,000. At this point, the blinds are 300 and 500 with a 500 big blind ante. So I'm in the hijack. I've got the Queen of Spades, Jack of Diamonds, and I open to 1,200 off of my stack of 18,000. And only the big blind calls. Now he's even shorter than I am. He's just got 14,000 in his stack, so just under 30 big blinds effective. Now the wizard says that opening from the hijack with Queen Jack off is 100%. So, and also my opponent, who had the Queen 6 of clubs, also 100% call. So far pre-flop, no issues to speak of with the pre-flop play. At that point, there's 3,200 in the middle, and my opponent has just 12,000-ish behind. And the flop came Jack of clubs, 10 of clubs, 4 of diamonds. So Jack, 10, 4 with 2 clubs. And we've got Queen of Spades, Jack of diamonds, and opponent checks. I decided to bet a quarter pot, so 800 into 3,200. And my opponent check raised me to 2,500. I decided to just call that bet. So my hand is supposed to bet the flop and bet small 100% of the time, never more than half the pot, usually the sizing I chose. And in opponent's shoes, we're actually supposed to mostly just call. It's an 83% call, although check raising to about 3x, as our opponent did here, is also fine the other 17% of the time. And then for my part, again, when we bet and get check raised to 3x, we have another 100% call. So far the wizard has no issue with my play in this hand, although my opponent has so far taken one fairly low frequency line himself. At that point, there's 8,200 in the middle, and my opponent has just 9,500 behind. The turn comes the Jack of Hearts. So our board is now Jack 10 for Jack with 2 clubs, and opponent just shoves. Of course, we are calling this. We've got Queen Jack. It's a 100% call. But what about the overbet shove from the Queen 6 of clubs? Well, that is a 0% play. When we have the Queen 6 of clubs in the big blind, we are still supposed to be checking to the original raiser 35% of the time. Although we can bet this card some percentage of the time. We are betting 6.5 big blinds, roughly 1/3 the pot, 65% of the time, and never shoving. It worked out for my opponent, who did shove, got called by 3 of a kind, and made a flush on the river. I always love doing this type of solver work, and special thanks to our friends at GTO Wizard for your support of the longest running strategy podcast in the history of poker podcasting. And now let's move on and talk about a couple of hands I played. There was a 2-day tournament at the Venetian with a buy-in of $1,600 and a guaranteed prize pool of at least $1 million, but they actually got closer to $2 million, believe it or not. I was at a pretty good table. I mean, not like a dream table, but I was certainly holding my own. I had 90,000, which was right around average, about 35 big blinds, about halfway through the day. So I had 35 bigs. My M was 14. The blinds were 1,500 and 2,500 with a 2,500 big blind ante. And the action folded to me in the low jack at an 8-handed table. I had the ace of spades, queen of diamonds. So of course we're going to open this. I made it 5,500. The button called, and he had me covered just by a little. He had about like 105, 110, and I had 90. The big blind called with a shorter stack. He had about 60K in his stack. So he called for 3,000 more. So the three of us see a flop. And with 20,500 in the middle, the flop came ace of diamonds, 9 of spades, 7 of clubs. So ace, 9, 7, rainbow, hero with ace queen. Big blind checks and the action's on me. You know, I'm trying to size up my opponent on the button. I believe he's from Israel, just based on his accent and kind of his general look. He looks like he could be Israeli to me. It's just a guess. He strikes me as a somewhat aggressive opponent. I'm not sure yet whether he's any good. He's in his mid to late 30s. He has a beard. He's about 5'7". He has a nice looking backpack. That's all the information I have. He hasn't really been at the table for very long. But my snap judgment, my first read, my profile, as we talked about last week with Shannon Elizabeth, was that he is certainly an aggressive type. But I haven't determined yet whether I think he's very good or very bad or somewhere in between. So, I mean, I can certainly check and hope the aggressive player bets that ace high flop. I do need to have a lot of checks when I get called from out of position, but I decided to put in a small bet instead. I bet 6,000 into 20,500, and our friend on the button does make the call. The big blind folds, so now we're going to be heads up out of position. And now with 32,500 in the middle, the turn comes the jack of diamonds, which puts 2 diamonds on the board of ace, 9, 7, jack. Hero with the ace of spades, queen of diamonds. That's kind of an important card, that queen of diamonds, I suppose. So I decided to size up my opponent. I did not watch the turn card come down. I actually watched my opponent, and he did not seem to react to that card. I did not think he was aware that I was looking at him at the time that jack of diamonds was dealt. And his reaction was kind of nothing. So he didn't seem to love nor hate that card at all. So it was unclear how he felt. It's important to note that the 10-8 did get there, although it's a pretty unlikely holding for somebody to just call on the button. I feel like players who want to play 10-8 suited on the button typically would 3-bet it or fold. It's a very uncommon call, but you do see it sometimes, especially in mid-stakes tournaments like this $1,600 buy-in. You will see that, although technically I think it would be considered a pre-flop mistake. I think ace-jack is a stronger possibility. Also, jack-9 and sets are hands for me to be worried about. But other than that, I do expect ace-queen to be good quite a bit. So I decided to check. And part of this is protecting my checking range versus a very aggressive opponent. So there will be so many times when I see bet this flop and then give up on the turn that I can't be weak every time I check on 4th Street having C bet the flop. So for that reason, it's important for me to have some kind of bluff catchers, some strong top pair type of hands in my range where I don't really mind calling another bet if he makes one. So I do check, and the plan is to call a reasonable bet. Opponent bombs it basically 25,000 into 32,005. So almost a pot-sized bet here, a huge bet. And I'll be honest, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable at this point. It doesn't feel like a flush draw. And especially when I have that Queen of Diamonds in my hand, it's not easy to know what to do against such a big bet. It's going to leave us with just about a pot-sized bet behind if we call. So now all of a sudden I'm starting to feel like my tournament life is being threatened. Does this player actually have ace jack or a set? I mean, it is consistent to play maybe like pocket nines this way, like not really wanting to 3-bet pre-flop when you only start with 30 big blinds. Maybe some players would feel like that's too big of a stack to necessarily try to take a coin flip against a hand like ace king. Maybe he just called with pocket sevens on the button, not knowing where he was at, but getting a decent price, including the implied odds or whatever. So yeah, I was starting to worry, but at the same time, I'm pretty close to the top of my range, especially when I check the turn. We can't really slow play our hand and then get bluffed off of it. That's pretty criminal. So I didn't love the situation, but because ace queen is so close to my top of range, I just couldn't fold. I had to call, and I didn't love it, and I was really hoping he wouldn't bet again on the river. And now with 82,500 in the middle, Hero with only 60,000 chips behind, the river came the Queen of Spades, giving us 2 pair on a board of Ace of Diamonds, 9 of Spades, 7 of Clubs, Jack of Diamonds, Queen of Spades. So even though I now had 2 pair, I still have to worry about yet another draw coming in. King 10, I mean, it's pretty unlikely that he has King 10 because he did call a bet on a flop of Ace 9, 7. But you never know. You know, sometimes people will float you and then they pick up a draw on the turn and then they bluff it and then they get there on the river. So it's just one more thing for me to worry about. But obviously I'm not going to fold to any bet now that I have top 2, but it's pretty uncomfortable to check and watch my opponent almost immediately shove all in. But yeah, I stuck with the plan. I slow played on purpose for a reason, and I called, and my opponent turned over 2 red 6s. So he flopped an under pair and just decided it was time to turn it into a huge 2-street bluff for his tournament life. And he basically bluffed off his entire stack with pocket 6s to me. And that'll do it for this episode. By the way, I did not cash in that tournament despite building a big stack. One of the many tournaments that I have bubbled during this summer of poker. Here's hoping that my luck turns around this weekend in the main event. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, and with special thanks, as always, to our very generous sponsor, ACR Poker, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas, please. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show nobody. Can't read my, no, she can't read my poker face. She's got to love